So from leaving South Africa, it was, I always knew there was something more to life. I was knew there was something that was there because I was always, as a child, very curious of energy and curious that there was something out there that I was just not seeing, but I could feel it.
Hmm.
I knew it was more. I knew the fabric was tangible, that you could feel things. And and then it gets kind of conditioned out of you, right? Through your experience being human in whatever place you grow up. You just get conditioned out of this natural beauty as we are as children, right? Coming back to the child self. So, that is something that I gained is coming back to this childlike state of fun, laughter, but also just this like expression of, what the world is and the fabric and seeing things with wonder. And so this was coming back to my clarity of just like, oh shit, as a child, I was completely right.
Yeah.
Everything I felt was completely right, and so there's a lot of like solace in that. And what I lost was, I was very heavily depressed from the age of 10 till 25, easy. Very suicidal, very depressed, you know, always had a knife or a gun in my hand, wanting to just pull the trigger or anything of this nature to really just do it. And then when I couldn't, it just got worse because then it was like you felt cowardly that you couldn't actually just do the dude,
Hmm.
the the deed. And so that was a part of it, man. That was, coming back to myself and just rearranging and aligning again. I lost all of that space of just like depression and fear and anxiety and hating myself and not being able to look in the mirror and all of this pain that I carried. It was because it was resistance. It was like this resistance that was like, I know there was something more, but my conditioning was blocking me. My
Yeah.
conditioning me was
And
holding me back.
what
And
conditioning was it? What was it? The culture you grew up in, or was it your family? What had conditioned? Like, where would that conditioning come from?
so it was like, it was school, it was parents, it was the environment that it was in. It's like, no, this isn't just energy, bro. Like, one plus one equals two,
Yeah.
and that's it. You work like a dog to live like a king. None of this little games like you got to be more serious, you got to do this. And if I'm, getting kicked out of class, there was no inquiry. Hey, listen, you've been kicked out of class a little bit too much. Like, what's the resistance here? So, the teachers at that time in that school, multiple schools that I was in, was just not, they didn't have the tools to deal with someone or show someone or mentor or guide someone that was, basically needing to awaken and needing to be seen. But that resistance also obviously carried and pushed and pushed. So when I opened eventually, it was like I completely opened.
Yeah.
And then I am my clearest version of myself right now. So that resistance, I'm so grateful for. So that conditioning, how I grew up, my environment, my parents doing the best they could with what they had to try like see like, oh my God, this child's getting kicked out of school left and right. He's super suicidal. He's, they had no idea what to do, but they did the best they could. And having all of that resistance of that, it helped me really just break open when I needed to and when I so chose. And once that happened, then I felt like the doors were open
Yeah.
and the hands were palms up. So that to me was another gain, instead of a loss, it's a gain. So you kind of realize your losses are actually your gains
Hmm.
as well. That is
Like
like
shedding
a
baggage.
totally, everything you shared, it serves you to a certain degree. It protects
Hmm.
you to a certain degree, so all of that pain, it was protecting me from the outside world, in some regard. So I'm grateful for that resistance. I'm grateful for that pain. I'm grateful for being in such a long time of agony. I don't wish it on anyone to be that long, but I'm hyper grateful for that timeline, so to speak.
Yeah. It's honestly, I'm 25 right now, and or 26, but you said you kind of went from 10 to 25. You were struggling, and I feel like I'm still in that loop. So there was a couple things you said where it really, I think I felt it in my spine. Like, oh man, like
Mhm.
I have hope that I'll be able to break out of this loop, but I've been stuck in these loops as long as I can remember. So it's really cool for me specifically to hear what you're saying here. Um, all right, so I want to let's shift gears a little bit to what you're working on right now. It's I'm interested in it's men's. Just tell me a little about it. But what I remember is that you counsel men on finding themselves, but men specifically. So correct anything I just said that wasn't right, and take it from there.
You got it, brother. So